I'm Heidi Otway, your host for this Conversations on Cannabis virtual forum, brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative at Florida A&M University. In this conversation, we're talking with actor Malik Yoba about his efforts to create social equity in the cannabis industry. To everyone joining on this live forum, please share, post, and tag a friend on Facebook to have them join this conversation. If you're on YouTube, share the link so others can join us as well. During the forum, we want you to send us questions in the comment box, and we'll do our best to have Malik answer them for you. We also want you to tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comments on YouTube and Facebook after this live program. Your name will be entered into a drawing on April 14th, 2022 to win a $100 gift card provided by one of Mary's partners. Malik, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you as our guest. So let's dive into this Conversations on Cannabis.
But can we just talk about the music first that y'all have? And that got me.
You love that?
It got me hyped. Yeah, I was like,
yeah, I was back here dancing as the countdown was going on.
That's good. That was good. Good touch.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Well, many of us know you from your acting roles in New York Undercover, Girlfriends, Empire, and The Last OG. But we had a lot of people that sent in questions before the show asking what prompted you to get into the cannabis industry.
Well, I've always been in cannabis. When it was called weed, when it was called reefer, when it was called pot. Yeah. As a consumer, I found out in high school, my father was actually moving some weight illegally. I found his little stash and his gun and cash and bullets. And I was like, wow, my father's like the real OG. And he kept that from us. But I found it. But from a business perspective, I'm an entrepreneur. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been involved with many different businesses besides entertainment. But one of the things that I was really interested in is the social equity piece. So just as a lifelong servant and, community-minded individual, the things that lead me in business are how do we have equity? So whether it's my real estate business, I had a marketing company, I had a label at one point, music label. I had a restaurant for 9 years in New York. I've been in many different spaces. And it's really simple. Like, are the least of us being taken care of? Right. So this was an opportunity, specifically through Roz McCarthy, who Minorities for Medical Marijuana and the brand Black Buddha Cannabis. Roz and I go back to the 90s as friends, and so I've been watching what she's been doing. As other folks I knew who were trying to get into the space, I would always send them to her and say, this is the person you need to talk to. And so I said to her last year sometime, especially after New York went legal, I said, Roz, like, where are the spaces, the opportunities that you see for someone like myself with my skill sets? And that's how I ended up as the chief strategy officer for Black Buddha Cannabis, working with her. But it was just an opportunity. And I'm also in real estate development. And so
tell us a little bit about that, the real estate. And that's primarily in New York?
Well, my first development project I've been involved in is in Baltimore. So,
Baltimore, okay.
Well, the genesis really is growing up in the hood, growing up in New York in the 70s and 80s when there were burnt out buildings and empty lots. And as a kid with dreams and with parents that exposed me to, things like, museums and, we could stay in the hood, although we lived in the hood. And I grew up in, affordable, low and moderate income, affordable co-ops.
Yeah.
So the majority of my childhood was spent in ownership. So we lived in a development that had a sports complex with an Olympic-sized pool and a gym, basketball court, and sauna, and a weight room in the 70s. In New York, in Harlem, in a complex apartment with views of the river. And so my father was very intentional about that. He was part of the union that was the developer, 11 Hospital Workers Union, where the sponsor of that development project. And so I grew up with this sense of ownership.
That's
And
great.
I used to always say, build your own generator so when they turn off the power, you still have lights.
Yeah.
He would often say, if there's a crack, fill it, right? And so he was very community minded and always about where's the solution and offer that, right? So growing up with that, but there were lots around us, right? There were burnt out buildings around us, and I didn't understand why that had to be.
Mm-hmm.
I go to downtown and I see how my white friends lived, and I used to say, when I'm gonna be a billionaire, so I could build parks and schools and programs and kinds of things. And so it's been a passion for a long time. I started buying real estate in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then in fact, I was in Florida, in Miami in 2005, and I was touring with a show that I had written called What's on the Hearts of Men, and we were producing it in Miami. And I met a Black developer from Liberty City, and we went to
I'm from Miami, so I totally know what you're talking about.
I forget his name, but I went to him for support, and he was always interested in production.
Yeah.
And he said to me, if you teach me production, I'll teach you development. And although that never happened with him, that planted the seed. And I began to look at the parallels between the two. And I'm one of them people that as a kid, I would geek out and stare at construction sites. I still do that. I still stare at buildings. I love architecture and I love development and from the ground up. And I'm still fascinated that we build structures. And I began to realize, if you look at a construction set and you look at a construction site and you look at a movie set, there are a lot of the same jobs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Engineering, electrical, carpentry, design, construction, all those things. And so in 2008, I had an opportunity to connect with a friend of mine named Dan Bythewood, who's a principal at a group called La Cité Development. And I told him, this is what I want to do. His cousin used to write on New York Undercover, Reggie Bythewood, which is when I first met Dan in the 90s. Dan gave me a seat at the table, and he began to teach me very much like an apprenticeship. I still feel like I'm a 15-year apprentice in the development business, even though I have Yoba Development, which is my development company, which I founded in 2017. But for me, again, as a servant, and working in film and television, one of my greatest contributions to the industry is something I created called the Real Estate Mixtape, which is a doc series around my journey to develop my first commercial property in New York.
Does it have anything to do with the cannabis industry at all? Any of your real estate developments?
I'm gonna make that link for you.
Okay.
So I just want to finish that thought. Is that led to the construction of a school. I'm right now involved in a development project in New York to redevelop a school and workforce and affordable housing and a sports complex.
Oh, congratulations. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. And so as it relates to cannabis in New York specifically, working with the cannabis board, the Office of Cannabis Management, in an unofficial capacity. I'm not working, but just helping to identify potential locations for dispensaries, but also the build outs, right? You can't do cannabis business unless you have real estate. So whether it's indoor grow, whether it's an outdoor grow, whether it's a lab, whether it's a university, wherever it is, you need the real estate. And so there's definitely an intersection between the two.
And I want to explore that just a little bit more, because here in Florida, cannabis is only allowed to be sold legally by a handful of companies that, it's called a vertical business. So they're the only ones that are allowed to touch and sell various forms of the cannabis plant as medicine here in Florida. So you kind of talked about all these different kind of ancillary types of businesses that could be developed around the cannabis industry. What are you seeing and hearing about opportunities for people of color maybe to do some work in Florida that supports the cannabis industry? Because here again, unless you have a license to sell, you can't do that in Florida.
Well, I can't speak to Florida because I live in New York, and I know that one of the things we're focused on in New York is getting right what other states didn't get right.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Really committed to. So when we think about the social equity piece, and obviously as HBCU, there's a need for us to understand all the different places that you can enter the space.
Okay.
So we have to think about it as any other industry, right? Holistically. Yeah. So there's cultivation, there's distribution, right? There's the science, there's the research, there's marketing, there's legal, there's the real estate piece, there's the content piece, there's the education piece. And so I think that we have to, there's a few things. New York has had the benefit of watching every other state come before us, look at the intention or the stated intention of equity, see how it's been executed, see it where the shortfalls are, and say, you know what, we're not going to make those mistakes. So the fact that I can even sit here and tell you that I've been working with the Office of Cannabis Management and the board to help identify locations, that's in an unofficial capacity. They've hired a commercial real estate company to actually do that work. But again, because of this lens of social equity, and these are Black and brown people in these positions making these decisions, they're having conversations broadly outside of just their colleagues in the office to say, how can you help? Right. And so the education piece, as a for instance, which you all are focused on.
Yeah.
You know, part of what I can bring to the table is access to community, right? So on the real estate side, you know, one of the things I said, there's a guy named Jay Morrison that does it out of Atlanta who does something called the Corner Class, where he teaches real estate. And Jay is in my doc series, The Real Estate Mixtape, right? And we talk about the same thing. So I said to the office, I said, why don't we do the same thing? Like literally go to the corner where dudes were hustling and hold these classes to educate people. Because folks aren't going to come to you if they're legacy, as a for instance, right? So then what does that represent? That represents both marketing and education.
Yeah.
Right? Outreach.
Yeah.
Content, right? So, you know, in New York, there are all these different ways that we can get into the space. It sounds like in Florida, there's this silo that's been built. When you said it.
Yeah, you can't touch the plant unless you have touch or cultivate or dispense the plant unless you have a license. And, you know, in Florida, they are working to diversify the
licensor.
People that the people, you know, Black people to get licenses in Florida. So they are working toward that. But we've had Roz on the show before to talk about other ways that people can get involved. And you kind of touched on it. You know, there's the real estate, the marketing. We even talked about security, cleaning the dispensaries, so all of that, you know, Eric, who's with M4MM, he does art around cannabis. So, you know, trying to get people to think of other ways to figure out how to get into the industry. And one of the things that we did get some questions on from folks who were asking, how do you get access to capital? Well, if you're a person of color. So what are you hearing and what are you say you're a billionaire,
that's so perennial question.
Non-billionaires.
Excuse me?
I said, you say you're a billionaire. So what about the non-billionaires and millionaires?
No, not yet.
I was speaking it into existence.
Oh, absolutely. Amen. I receive it, my sister. I receive it, my sister. Listen, but that's the thing, right? I think that intention is everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can't become what we don't see.
Right.
And I think that the perennial question is always in any industry, whether it's tech, real estate, fashion, whatever it is, access to capital as people of color is connected to being under networked, right? And even when we are more networked, it's really getting people to buy into our dreams. So, it's a challenge. You know, I have some cats in New York, Wall Street guys, who are looking to start a fund specifically for investing in folks of color who want to be in the space. But you know, it's one of those things where there's a short-term answer and a long-term answer, and the short-term goal, a long-term goal. So it might be a challenge right now, but you're at a university. So what portion of your student population is studying finance and choosing to get into that lane so they have the understanding of how money moves, how money works, and where to get from, so that this answer to your question could actually be met by students at your university? If we're saying we've got long-term vision for this. So if I'm a 21-year-old at your school right now, or an 18-year-old, right, 19-year-old that's just coming in as a freshman, perhaps I want to look at that as an opportunity, because 10, 15 years from now, when I'm 29 or 35, whatever it is, I can actually impact that reality of I'm in a position now because I'm part of an investment group at a bank. And let's say by now the Safe Banking Act passed. And so federal, any federally insured banks, when we get to the federal legalization of it all, you can, now play in that space because you've been tracking, you see where the gap is now, and you say, okay, I'm going to position myself to fill that crack, as my father said, there's a crack, fill it. No different than I did in real estate. I inserted myself into the business. No one asked me to be in it. I said, this is what I want to do. I see where the problems are, so I'm going to do something about it.
That is some great advice. And I hope that all of our listeners, whether you're a student at Florida A&M or you're trying to figure out how to start your own business, go ahead and take that advice. Really good advice.
Add to that.
Go ahead.
I was at a community screening the other day about a mixtape with the community where we're building the school. We invited all the stakeholders from the community. So students from as young as 12 years old were in the room, to people from the board of the school, to people from the projects across the street, right? And there was a young lady who considers herself a community activist who went to that school. She's now like 30 and grew up in the projects. And she's like, everybody keeps telling me I need to be resilient. I'm tired of being resilient. I said, girl, resiliency is a lifestyle.
It is.
It's not a choice. It's not an outfit you put on. Because today I'm going to be resilient, because I think if I'm resilient today, I'm going to achieve the goal. All of this is hard work. None of this is easy. Everybody in this space is an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And even the corporations that have come up, like the big boys, Canada Bee, or Leafly, any of the big, multi-state operators that are doing their thing, it's entrepreneurs that started with them.
Exactly.
And
it is.
In order to be in this space, you have to be incredibly resilient and know that you're going to hear no more than you hear yes. But if you feel your purpose to do this, right? For me, I don't do anything just for money.
Right.
I don't chase the money.
Right.
I chase the purpose.
Right.
I chase the passion and the mission. And in my experience, the money will follow when you move on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been speaking at a lot of conferences lately that are targeting people of color to kind of help them learn about the cannabis industry. Can you share with me any other conferences that you are attending or about that maybe some of our listeners and viewers could consider going to?
Well, in June, Cannabis Week is happening in June. Forgive me on the dates on that.
Yeah. Well, they can Google it. Yeah. So Cannabis Week.
Yeah. In New York, I'll be moderating a panel with, I believe it's going to be Ruben McDaniel from the board of the Office of Cannabis Management, and a cat named Calvin Fry, who's one of the legacy dudes, who, is one of the first Black people to have a dispensary in the country. And certainly, and Calvin's a great dude. In fact, you should have Calvin on here.
I was about to say, maybe you can help us get Calvin on the show. Definitely. We would love to have him.
There's two people that I would have on here as well. Calvin Fry, I call him my West Coast Oracle.
Okay.
He's the game forever. And a guy named Sid Gupta in New York. And I call him my East Coast Oracle.
Okay.
And, I'm humble in this space. Like, look, for me, Roz gave me a seat at the table last fall.
Yeah.
But again, as a serial entrepreneur and a person who's been around the space for a long time, it didn't take long for me to jump in and just move like water. And I always say, look, I'm here to learn. I hope to learn from you today as much as I can share something that might be elucidating for someone else. But for me, I don't, the joke is a friend of mine who's a legacy guy texted me last weekend, and he goes, Malik, I hear you're the guy to talk to in New York about bud. And I was like, bro, I don't know. You're the guy. As long as I've known you since 1995 or 7 or whatever the hell it's been.
Yeah.
But I am having conversations, and I am in spaces, particularly on the political side, decision-making side, that other people haven't had access to. And so I don't take that for granted. And I just have always been the plug or the bridge, as it were, to say, okay, if I'm in the room, then I'm gonna let you know what's going on.
Yeah. I want to kind of go back a little bit to what you said earlier about, your father was, dealing, you've used, and, we talk about the stigma of cannabis in the Black community. It was like, it's taboo, even in Hispanic communities. We've done some research with people here in Florida, and they're like, my abuela say that's the devil, so this stigma around cannabis. But here we are on this live public platform having an open and honest conversation about cannabis. How does that make you feel, just knowing the stigma of this plant and the impact it's had, the negative impact it's had on communities of color, and then to us be talking about ways to actually, make money off of it legally?
Well, I think it's important to understand the matrix
that
we're in, right? Stigmas are generally related to religious beliefs, political beliefs,
right?
Because someone told you this is wrong or this is bad. But the fact of the matter is, physiologically and biologically, we have an endocannabinoid system in our body. And so, as part of nature ourselves, the things that are made that make us, magnesium, potassium, niacin, all the things that we have as humans are also found in plants.
Right.
And so the illegalization of cannabis was about control. It was about money. It was about politics. It wasn't about nature. It wasn't about science. No one has been like, well, the science is wrong. No, you do enough research and you'll find out for yourself. And that's important, to really be educated on, well, why was a stigma put on it? Who made it illegal? Because it was legal at one point in the United States. There's a whole industry, hemp industry, furniture, clothing, health, all of these things. And at a certain point with the war on drugs, which was about what? Control and politics. So personally, as someone who's been a lifelong youth advocate, an activist, an educator, I never took a position on the just say no. Like most people don't realize that, but I never said that, because my thing was always, what do you say yes to?
Right.
Because the things you tell young people to say no to, they're going to go do anyway.
They're going to do it. Right. Yeah.
So what can we do to make you say yes? And that's been my attitude about it.
Yeah. Well, we have, for the I tell you, we had, hundreds of people who registered to participate in the show, and several of them actually sent in questions for you. And based on what you just said, I want to share with you a question that came from Eric. He said, are you willing to be a voice for federal deregulation and the removal of cannabis from the Schedule I list of controlled substances?
1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
What else?
No, why? Why would you be an advocate?
Well, because, again, it's, there are a lot of, look, we were illegal to exist as free people.
Yeah.
It was a law. In fact, we used to be real estate. It was illegal for a Black person to be on the Supreme Court. So these notions of legality are man-made. This ain't God talking, it's humans. And it's usually white folks talking about what you can't do to control the masses. So absolutely, we have to be educated to understand that this truly is a God-given right, because this grows as you're in Florida, as natural as oranges and any other plant, iguanas and alligators
Right.
in Florida. Come on now. So let's not look at it for something that it's not. And I think I'm so glad you all are doing what you're doing, because education is everything. And
It
that's a
is.
lane that I really, am passionate about. If we don't
Mhm.
educate the folks about what time it really is, you said something earlier and I was going to just applaud you. But essentially what you were speaking to was truth. We live in a world where lies have become the new reality and don't tell the truth.
Mhm.
And so I'm an advocate for the truth. So federal law, has to catch up what 37 states already know to be true, which
Yeah.
is let the people connect with nature in the way that they need to, because there are medicinal benefits, there are
Mhm.
health benefits, there are economic benefits, which means not just money in our pockets, but tax revenue for the country. Um,
Mhm.
and there's opportunities, even from back to real estate. There are companies that are constructing using hemp,
Yeah.
fire retardant, lighter, more sustainable. So
Mhm.
there's ways to cultivate this plant and have multiple usages for it that need to be explored and acted upon.
Yeah. You just referenced the medicinal value of cannabis use, and I saw a video where you talked about your own healthcare scare where you actually used cannabis to get well. Can you tell our listeners and viewers about that experience?
So I had quadruple bypass surgery, and I
You're too
laughed.
young to have that.
Well, not if you have lipoprotein little a or C-reactive protein, which
Okay, I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad.
well, this is if you have heart disease in your family.
Okay.
And I'm 54, and I would encourage people even over like 40, maybe even
Yeah.
younger, when you go to your annual physical and they give you your cholesterol check, like annually, they be, oh, it's within normal range. Well, the fact is, 70% of people who have heart attacks, their cholesterol readings are in the normal range if they're just checking for the basic cholesterol readings.
Okay.
The indicators, lipoprotein little a, it's called, and C-reactive protein, insist that those get checked as well, because
Okay.
there's specialized tests for that.
Mm-hmm.
If those numbers are high, then you will have a greater incidence for blockage, calcium deposits,
Wow.
and blockage in your arteries, which can lead to heart disease. I did not know that
Wow.
until I started feeling something that felt like um, heartburn from eating spicy food last April 9th, and
Mm.
then tests later. And I would also say people go get an EKG, yes, stress test, yes, but the only thing that's really going to show what's going on, even if you do an angiogram, is a CT scan to see
Yeah.
exactly what's going on in your heart. So if there's heart
Mm.
disease in your family, go get it checked out, because then you can end up like me, not knowing you need a quadruple bypass at 53 years old.
Wow. Wow. So tell us about how you use cannabis as
So,
medicine.
so I laugh because when I was in the hospital, before I was eating gummies and for
You're talking
relax,
about the cannabis gummies,
yeah, for
the CBD?
relaxation, yeah, at
Yeah.
CBD. And so I asked the surgeon, I said, so I just need to know, are gummies okay? He goes, what? I was like, this is before the surgery. I was like, bro, I'm about to have heart surgery. Like, I need to chill the fuck out. So I'm gonna have some gummies. He's like, let me check with the other doctors, and but everything was fine. But in recovery, it's quite painful.
Yeah.
It is quite painful
Yeah.
recovering from heart surgery
Yeah.
and trying to sleep and get comfortable, and
Yeah.
it's all so. Without question, what got me to sleep is CBD and THC gummies as well. CBD,
Yeah.
both, but
Hmm.
also on the scar on my chest, using ointments for the healing, where I have now a keloid down the middle of my chest.
Wow.
Um, so for pain management, for sleep, and pain relief, just topical. I was
Yeah.
topical and ingesting for sure. to this day. Well, actually, lately I've been sleeping without any cannabis.
That's
but
good.
What I do feel the need, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that story, and also, sharing about the heart disease. I think that's something that our viewers will and listeners will certainly appreciate. So we have another question that came in from one of our audiences that goes back to, again, finding ways for people of color to, leverage opportunities in the cannabis industry. And this one came from Cherie, who asked, what suggestions do you have for how our community can begin to connect and build collectively towards leveraging some of the opportunities in the cannabis industry? So basic, like she says, kind of like, what's that basic first step?
Well, I think the basic first step is the question that she asked is how do we do that? And I think the fact that we're having this conversation, this is a result of my relationship with Roz, who continue with you, right? And that's what happens. Me telling you, hey, Calvin Fry in California, Sid Booth in New York. I think it's operating not out of a space of lack. One of the things that people will run into, unfortunately, but it's human nature, is everyone doesn't have the same consciousness coming into the space. There are many people who are coming from a place of lack and a mentality of lack, and that will drive competition and transactional behavior. But if you understand that, I like to say to people, how many drops of water in the ocean? How many grains of sand are on the beach? Pick any one beach. And we have to have that as our mentality, that this is an abundant universe and that there is value in sharing information, sharing opportunities, sharing resources, and working collectively. So I don't think there's one way to get to that answer, but I think it starts with the understanding and the belief and the lifestyle that says, I'm going to move in this world cooperatively. I'm going to be inclusive. I'm going to share my resources, not to play yourself and give up too much, but I think that, not being afraid and not just being transactional with folks and saying, we can do this. And, perhaps a lot more of the answer could come from the person who asked the question.
Yeah. So kind of look around.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a comment from a Rosa Robinson that I think is something that you probably could speak on. Team, can you all pull up that question from Rosa, the comment from Rosa Robinson? So she says, currently there is cannabis gentrification in the various states. However, I am faithful and know that this too will change. What are your thoughts on that comment about cannabis gentrification?
What does cannabis gentrification mean? I've never seen those two words together.
Yeah, so gentrification is a term that's used when for communities of color, the people who live there are moved out of their space. I know what that means. I don't know what it meant by the cannabis gentrification. So maybe Ms. Rosa can put in the comment box what she's hearing and what does that mean, so that we can have you weigh in on that.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. I'd never heard that terminology before, but you and in real estate, I don't know if that's what she's talking
about. I don't want to
assume, right?
What she meant. So if she can clarify what she meant, that'd be helpful.
Okay. So while we wait to see if she can clarify that question, is there any other advice or information that you'd like to share with our listeners and watchers of the show today when it comes to social equity, in cannabis, in the cannabis space? Any closing comments? Any closing thoughts?
I mean, yeah, resilience pops into my head. I think that, it's not just cannabis, right? So you're in the cannabis space where you're going to need capital, then you're going to run into the social equity issue there. So I just think that we, as hard as things are, we all have it better than our ancestors did.
Right.
And so I think that brings us back to the resiliency conversation. I just think that you got to be in it for the marathon.
Yeah.
Like in life itself, it's not about the quick hit. And, yes, it's a business, but don't only be driven by, I got to make money and I got to figure out how I can take care of me. because we aren't doing this thing collectively. Like both of these cats I mentioned, Sid and Calvin, I've only met in the last, say, 6-7 months in being in this space and doing this work. They knew me because of what I've been doing for the last 30 years. But, I also, it's important for me to let them know that they are just as valuable to me as they may perceive my value to them.
Right.
Right. Because they have something to offer and they're educating me.
Yeah. So as a newbie in the cannabis space, where do you see yourself 2 years from now? And where do you see?
Oh, mother. No.
No, you can't say that.
I'm gonna just continue to be like water and be in all the spaces where I can add value.
Yeah. Yeah. And where would you like to see the cannabis industry, let's say 2-3 years from now?
Federal legalization, lower taxation, and California is a great example of how to not do it right, because they're taxed at a level that is not profitable for operators on any part of the supply chain, right? So that's really, really important, that, this idea that, billions of dollars are made in the black market anyway, or the legacy market, because now there's the gray market. It's operating between the two spaces, but that, getting those tax codes right so that people can run profitable businesses, sustainable businesses, and not be taxed at a level where it's prohibitive to do business.
Right.
I think that's really important.
Okay. Well, we just got another question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying that people have to fight for that. Back to the education. Like, you need to know what's going on so that they can advocate for that, and on a local level, community level, and state, and then federal level.
Well, I have a question that just came in. Could you speak to getting money and paying salaries once in the cannabis business? Because that's something that you could comment on. No? Okay. All right. Well, I thought your closing comments were great, and I want to thank you so much for being a guest on this Conversations on Cannabis virtual forum, brought to you by the Medical Marijuana Research and Education Initiative at Florida A&M University. Thank you to everyone watching this program. Please tell us what you think about this forum by completing the survey that will be posted in the comment boxes on YouTube and Facebook after this live program. If you complete the survey, your name will be entered into a drawing on April 14th, 2022 to win a $100 gift card provided by one of Mary's partners. We also encourage you to go to the Florida Department of Health Office of Medical Marijuana Use website to learn how to obtain a legal medical marijuana card in the state of Florida. And we also encourage you to go to Florida A&M University's Mary website to learn more about this initiative. Malik, thank you so much for being our guest. I thoroughly enjoyed this Conversations on Cannabis.
Can I say one last thing? Or we are?
Can. Absolutely.
So, I do have some partners that are growers who are actually growing in Florida. They're growing.
You got ties to Florida.
Yeah, I do.
Let's talk about that.
So they're there. It's a company called Tropical Cannabis. Some Colombian cats. They have farms in Colombia as well as Florida. But also the agriculture of it all, right? All are in the sunny state of Florida. And so I have also gotten involved in a business called Extra Grow. That's XTRA Grow, which is the world's first premium organic plant-based fertilizer. So there's a cat in Florida. I've never met him yet, but Captain Planet, who grows out of Florida. If you ever look at any of his Facebook posts or Instagram, he exclusively uses Extra Grow as a product. So that's another lane, the agriculture of it all, right? Of this business that people can get into, that they should be thinking about. And Extra Grow is certainly a way to do that. And so it's a small family business out of Texas. And so, perhaps there's even opportunities in the state, and we can connect offline around that for opportunity for distribution in the state, so people can begin to use the product. And there's opportunities to make money that way as well.
Okay, great. Wonderful advice. Again, thank you. Good day, everybody.
Thank you.